My name is Andreas. I'm the data science team lead at Jeff. Maybe some of you know something about Jeff. Probably a lot of you don't know a lot about Jeff. If anyone here is from Spain, maybe more of you would have heard about it. I'll explain a little bit of exactly what it is we do in Jeff and what we're trying to achieve. But in a nutshell, basically, we're going to talk about how in Jeff we're trying to really revolutionize. And when I say revolutionize, I really mean it, I promise. How we're trying to revolutionize online and offline entrepreneurship, and how exactly we're doing that with data. And maybe a little bit more focused on data science towards the end, but generally with data. So Jeff, what is Jeff? Basically, Jeff, we're a pretty 5 years old startup from Spain, from Valencia. Although right now we're a remote first company, so we have people pretty much, maybe not quite all over the world yet, but in quite a few locations. Jeff is different depending on who you are, because we have a little bit of a two-sided customer base here. The main one, and maybe the most accessible one, so basically for anyone watching here, if any of you download the Jeff app, which you can do in Android or iOS, and we're active in quite a few countries, maybe depends exactly what city, but if you download our app, basically, you're what we would call an end consumer. And to the end consumer, we're something very specific. Basically, what we want to do is we want to build a way for you to take care of your day-to-day activities in a nice way, in an easy way, in a proactive way, and basically deliver more of what we call the good life to you. Basically, we want to help you live better. And more specifically, how that actually works right now. And we have what we would call verticals, so kind of these 4 different business lines, although the aim is to be expanding these. We have what we call Mr. Jeff, which is a laundry service, basically a laundry service where the main aspect of this is you have a system of subscriptions and a system of logistics. So basically, if you're someone who doesn't enjoy doing your laundry, someone like me and someone like a lot of other people, basically you could pay and have someone come to your door to collect your laundry, collect your dry cleaning. They would go off and do that and then give it back to you. We have Beauty Jeff, which is a chain of hair and beauty salons, so kind of a similar kind of aspect where you can book turns, as we call them, online, and you can go in and get your haircut and things like that. Fit Jeff, which are basically gyms, small kind of boutique studio gyms, so you can do different classes like high intensity training, yoga, Pilates, things like that. Again, a subscription handled all from the app. Relax, which is basically similar to the beauty service, but with massages instead of beauty services. So right now, that's kind of these 4 sort of aspects of life that we're trying to take care of. And really the key here is that you as an end consumer, as you download our app or you go in person, you can also go in person, and you really enjoy what we like to call the omni-channel ecosystem. That is to say that underneath one brand, the brand of Jeff, we try and promise you one solid level of quality and one place where you can really take care of all of these things that you want to do in your day-to-day. Where these things you want to do in day-to-day, they're things that either you have to do because they're obligations, and we want to make those things easier for you and more enjoyable, or the things you do to look or feel good. And that's why in Jeff, we say we're trying to give you the good life. So that's kind of how this works from a consumer perspective. And the other side of the equation, which actually is more of really the core and the mission of what Jeff is trying to do, and maybe a bit more to do with this presentation, are what we call the entrepreneurs. Sometimes I might call them partners. If I call them partners, I'm sorry, a bit of an old habit. But these entrepreneurs, basically, they're people who want to work with us in Jeff, people who are desiring to do some kind of entrepreneurial venture, start their own business, have a bit more control over their life. What we want to do in Jeff is we want to really empower these people to develop these businesses and do that with technology. So really, there are many people who would like to build their own business, either because they want to make more money, they want to have more control, or they want to be their own boss, all these kind of things. And we really want to make this easier for them, make this easier and more successful for them, and do this with technology. And this is going to have different kinds of ways of taking place over time. And right now, this kind of takes place in what we call business in a box. And this is a fancy way of saying franchising. Basically, we have these business lines, these verticals, these franchises that we've designed, which have their own operations, their own processes, their own brands. And we're going to give this to you in a nice packaged way that you can open up your own business and actually keep giving you control, because kind of the point of this is we're not trying to be really controlling on our end, but we're trying to give you these tools, because maybe, for example, you don't know a lot about marketing, you don't know a lot about branding, you don't know a lot about operations, and of course most people don't know a lot about technology. We're just trying to give you these things, so give you this kind of a packaged environment where you can really build your own business as you would like to. And that really, kind of obviously comes in these 4 verticals we mentioned: the Mr. Jeff, Beauty Jeff, Fit Jeff, and Relax Jeff. But there's something kind of fundamental really about these 2 sides of the coin, and that's how they interact. And obviously you have this idea of customers interact with business owners. And so here we have the consumers interacting with the entrepreneurs. But this interaction is really unique because it's really, really fundamentally omni-channel or multi-channel. Because on one side of the coin, as I mentioned, as a consumer, you can go into this app, you can order the service you want, you can ask for someone to come and pick up your dirty laundry, you can ask to reserve a class, whatever it is that floats your boat. And that will obviously, in some kind of a digital way, communicate with this end entrepreneur, this end business owner, where they will be doing something in their own shops in person to deliver you this kind of a service. And from the other side, you can also, as a person, instead of going via the app, you can also go in person. And this is kind of done on purpose, because maybe you prefer to have some of this aspect of an in-person experience rather than go by app. But the idea of the app is to really have this idea of an ecosystem all there. So really, when you think about it, this is really, really fundamentally omni-channel. And it's really the interaction between these 2 sides which makes things interesting. And as I mentioned, fundamentally, really the core is more the entrepreneur here than the consumer, because obviously the consumer is the customer of the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur is kind of more directly our customer. That's not to say we don't care about the consumers. That's kind of half of our vision. But this other half to do the entrepreneur is really fundamental, because at the end of the day, the consumers interact with this entrepreneur, and they interact and they expect some kind of a quality. They expect a real service. And that's really where this entrepreneur has the control. So they will try and build their business, try and grow their business by assuring quality, by doing things like marketing, bringing new people and adding new services. And that's really the input they give on this offline side, because in reality, this is very offline. You're doing this inside their franchises, inside their shops. And that's how they kind of grow their business. And really what they get out of this, and here I've used a Spanish word. I'm not Spanish, but I really like this word, which is emprender. Emprender is a Spanish word which kind of means to entrepreneur or entrepreneuring. And that's really what we kind of get back from this interaction, right? So as the entrepreneurs can offer this service to the end consumers and grow this service, what they get back is they really get back this fulfillment of being able to be an entrepreneur, which can mean many things. It can mean money, it can just mean more control, but it's some kind of a life benefit that you have as going in this. But of course, being an entrepreneur is difficult. And that's why we have this mission to really revolutionize what it is to be an entrepreneur and make it easier and ensure success. And the reason why being an entrepreneur is difficult, as maybe some people here who are watching have tried to do some kind of entrepreneurial venture in the past, is you need to know a lot about a lot of things. And there are many decisions you need to make that can really impact how well your business is going to do, right? We've seen very objectively, and maybe this sounds extremely obvious, but I'm a data scientist, so I like to put the obvious things with data so that everyone knows they're true. But the success of these entrepreneurs, the success of their shops, really lives and dies in how easily they can and how well they can attract new customers, how well they can grow that customer base, and how well they can keep these guys interested. So basic, growth and retention, new users and retained users. And all the different decisions they make in the process of running their business has a big impact on how this works, right? Because there are many aspects, but depending on where exactly your shop is, you might be able to attract new customers. Obviously, where I'm from, for example, within a 5 kilometer radius, maybe there are only 200 to 500 people. Whereas if you go to some neighborhoods in downtown Hong Kong, within a 5 kilometer radius, you might actually be attracting 1 million consumers. Well, maybe not. Maybe someone will call me out on my statistics there. But, so then on one side, you have the thing of the location of the shop is really important, and that can really affect these things. And then, you can have other aspects, just things like price. What price do you put? And maybe you want to offer a different kind of price to new people because maybe they like discounts. Maybe that's a good way of attracting them. Maybe you want to give a different price and actually a lower price again to people who are more retained, people who are more engaged. Maybe you want to give them discounts depending on the kind of service they've had. Maybe you've made a mistake in some aspect. And, this is just two examples of these questions, these decisions these guys have to make, guys and girls have to make in running their own business to ensure their success. And obviously, as you can imagine, from choosing to where your shop has to be, to choosing how your prices should be, to understanding exactly how to shape your business, that's really, really tough. And the really tough thing about this as well is there's a fundamental online-offline interaction here as well. Because whereas maybe you would see your customers more in person, you still have this aspect of, how do I handle logistics? How do I know they're going to be at home if I've only talked to them by the app? How do I communicate with them? So you have really this fundamental interaction of online and offline in all of these decisions, which makes it that much more complicated than how it would be to run a typical, maybe like a hair salon that you would have where basically everything goes online, right? And that's really where we come in. And that's really this idea of revolutionizing this with data, right? Because we in the data team have this huge advantage, and that's that all across our business, all across our consumers, and all across our entrepreneurs, we're collecting data. I mean, this is not a new concept. I think it's one of these big things of the last, 20 or so years to collect data. Obviously within reason. I mean, mainly we're talking about transactional data and how people are purchasing. But this is a really big advantage because the thing is that if you're, for example, the owner of a simple hair salon in downtown Valencia, you know what's happening in your shop. But in being someone who handles this for thousands and thousands of people, you know what's happening in thousands and thousands of locations. And I mean, we all know as data people that that's really fundamental, because what you want to be doing is you want to be collecting a significant amount of data from many different kinds of contexts, because the more contexts you understand, the more you can understand how you can improve this going into the future, right? So that's where we really have this huge advantage, where in the data we collect from the other businesses and other things going on, and maybe even open source data and things like that, we can really help these entrepreneurs take advantage of this and taking advantage of it, I mean, really improving their business. That's the other side of this coin. And beyond the simple collection of data, well, simple, maybe if our data engineer is listening, he might kill me for saying it's going to be simple. But beyond collecting the data, we also have this aspect of really, how do we deliver value? And that can have two different kinds of main themes that I've included here. One could be a very direct way with insights. Entrepreneurs, business owners, they want to know what their revenue is, what their costs are, who their best customers and things like that. So these might be the typical things that even in a big organization, we want to find out about. We want to understand retention. We want to understand churn. We want to understand performance. And that's kind of one aspect where it's more of like a direct visualization and delivery of insights to these entrepreneurs. But the other side, which is maybe more to do with my role as data science team lead, how can you actually deliver not just insights, but the concrete recommendations? Because obviously I mentioned this is a really hard task, and having data to decide how to do things, that's useful. But when you have to decide across 50 different aspects of your business, and this can have a huge impact on how things go. I mean, of course, you're dealing with a lot of risk. I mean, you've paid to open this business, and this is your maybe your lifeblood in some cases. You really need for a lot of this to be really chewed up and given to you on a bit of a plate. And also, here we also have a bit of a trust dynamic. So here with this aspect where we can actually take this data and really concretely advise them to do things. And obviously, for example, I put before this aspect of the price, that's saying, hey, maybe you want to change the price, you want to attract new people. Well, we recommend that you lower the price 10%, 20%, 30%, things like that. And that's really where we have this really big value we can deliver to these entrepreneurs in really, taking what the data we know, automating what kind of decisions they might want to make, and giving them these recommendations so that even though they maintain control, they have all the help they could possibly want. And I give you kind of two big examples of how we're doing all of these kind of things. The first one has more to do with data collection, because obviously we have this big aspect that to actually be successful in this, we need to collect data. Right now, how a lot of that data is collected, we have one side, which are the users and the consumers ordering with the app. And obviously, all of those things are taking place digitally. So that's very easy to record and to maintain. But then we also have the other aspect of the actual performance and the actual services being offered in person to these people. So obviously we know maybe Freddie, let's name names, Freddie wants to wash his favorite shirt, but we don't actually know exactly how this is taking place, at least in a digital sense. There we rely in a big part on actually the entrepreneur and the business person in, you can say, good faith, really recording with the business management software that we offer them, recording exactly how this takes place. But obviously, sometimes maybe the business owners won't see the value in doing this, so they won't want to do it. Sometimes it might be that they're really like bogged down on work, so they won't have time to do it. So then we can have a little bit of gaps in our memory, and that can be problematic. And that's where maybe we would see sometimes, for example, certain users in certain shops have a crazy good retention, but actually they're not different users. It's actually, it's not the same user who has good retention, it's different users. And because the business owner doesn't quite understand what the value is of creating new users, creating new user accounts for the different customers, well, then they just don't bother. And that's fine. I mean, that's their prerogative. That's what they can decide to do. But that's a part, as well, like with this value delivering, that in delivering better value to them, we hope that they can see more of the value and the point in doing this. But one of the ways that we try to invent a pretty innovative way to get around this is with the CCTV cameras that we actually have in the shops. So we're collaborating with the Spanish government actually to do this in this innovation project. And basically the idea here is that if we have these CCTV cameras in the shops and we have the images from this, well, maybe what we can do is do some kind of object detection or like object recognition of what's actually going on in the shops to automate a lot of this process. And I can see some examples here. We have these kind of like tagged images. We can see, for example, that in the top one, this is actually the owner. In this case, he's actually handling some of the orders there. We can see at the top of the screen in this red box that he has an order there ready. And in this way, we can really actually extract from what's going on automatically what's actually being done. And that's really fundamental, right? Because that's kind of cutting out the middleman of this business owner having to do this by hand and really making it much more automatic. And then automation, that's really fundamental. And it also really gives us a lot more insight into these non-transactional events, because obviously we have a big aspect here where the in-person operation is important, and there are a lot of happen completely offline and completely invisibly to us that we want to collect more data on, because obviously we want to keep helping these guys. So, we can understand how they're packaging, how they're doing things, how many things they do at a time, how they do the deliveries, what times are important for them to be doing this. And that really, we hope, will help them. So, automating all this will give us a big edge. And more on the value side of it, the second example is to do with the location, because obviously the location of the shop is really fundamental. Because it determines not just how many people will come in person, but also how many people will come in online. Because obviously putting a shop somewhere in, let's say, maybe rural India, you might not have such good traffic online. Whereas putting a shop somewhere in downtown Oslo, maybe you won't have so many in-person interactions, but the online will be a lot more strong. And obviously that's really important then, because it really affects what kind of experience you're going to have as a business owner. And this can be a really big struggle, because these are a lot of variables to take into account. And so let's say, for example, you wanted to open a shop somewhere in the south of Madrid. For example, you might start on this little map here on the bottom, my bottom left. I'm not sure which one it is for you guys. I guess bottom left again. And you just have a map. You don't really know much more. I mean, maybe you have a bit of an expertise in the area. You can understand more or less where you would like to put things. But again, you don't exactly know how the performance is going to be. You know something about Jeff, but you don't know a huge amount. So you're a little bit blind. You need to use your own knowledge to really pick out where to go. The iteration we've gone on this is to really, learn from the locations we have and determine in some algorithmic way what locations are actually better than others. And this is really crucial. And this is this kind of middle image here, where we've kind of colored in different areas of the map where we expect performance to be better. And that really helps, because that, brings this like really plain open map into something a lot more concentrated, where there's certain key areas that are the ones you should focus on. And the hope is, and something we're working on right now, is to actually narrow this down even more. Like go from just saying, you should be in downtown Getafe, to actually going, no, you have to be on this street corner. And we see actually that this is possible, because we know that, if you put the shop outside of, let's say, a school, people are very, very recurrently going around that school. That gives you a lot of visibility. And even if your customer is going to be online, that still is really, really important. But this is a really cool example of how we really deliver this value to the partners, these entrepreneurs, even before they open the shop. Because, we're bringing this really complex decision-making that's really crucial for the end performance. We're bringing this with intelligence and our knowledge of other success in the past. And this is challenging because that's the scale to the whole world, which is really tough because we're growing around the whole world. It also needs to be really common sense and explainable, because, if we show them a really good area in the middle of the field, they're going to lose a lot of confidence in us. And also, you have this issue that the target data is really dirty and really sparse. So that means training really generic out of the box machine learning algorithms can be really hard. So that's a bit of a challenge. And kind of as a last point here before I wrap up, is we also want to bring this even further, because obviously you can have these different locations. You can see on the left-hand side, maybe you put your shop in a richer gated neighborhood, or maybe you put it more in downtown of a city. And obviously then the more we understand about the location and the more we understand about the performance of different locations in the past, we can actually tell you what are the kind of strategies you should follow. Maybe you should launch more Facebook AdWord campaigns, because we know that people around here are high income. They use they use the mobile a lot. They like online services. Or maybe you should be relying more on in-person adverts and people coming by across you in the street, because really people aren't going to go much more than 5 minutes walk to get to your shop. And we know that from the other shops. So we're going to recommend this kind of stuff to you. And as well, in this case of being downtown, maybe you should also target office people, because we've also seen that maybe, it would be interesting if a company offered your shop as a perk, and that could be really cool. So then we can really see how we're delivering that value that we've learned across our whole business and helping this decision making to the entrepreneurs, and really revolutionizing the way they think about actually running the business and hopefully making them more successful.